Bernadette Hill. Welcome to Savage Simplicity Storytellers, where I talk with smart women being savage about simplifying their lives. In this powerful conversation, Dr. Lola Adeyemo shares how her journey from Nigeria to corporate America inspired a career dedicated to building space where none existed. Welcome to Savage Simplicity. I'm your host, Bernadette Hill, and today's episode is a powerful reminder that belonging isn't just about fitting in. It's about designing spaces that fit you. My guest today is Dr. Lola Adeyemo, a strategist, speaker, nonprofit founder, and champion for immigrant voices. She's also the CEO of EQI Mindset, founder of Immigrants in Corporate Inc., and host of the Thriving in Intersectionality podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Adeyemo.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Did your book come first, Thriving in Intersectionality, or did the TED Talk come first?
It's funny you asked. Both happened at the same time. So I started working on my book in 2021. I started working on my book in 2021. I gave my TED Talk a couple of weeks after my book was launched.
Ah,
So
nice. Can you tell me a little bit about what brought about that opportunity and how you prepared for it?
I think that was the beginning of my diving into storytelling and realizing that why I'm uncomfortable with motivational speaking, I love telling stories. And so learning the difference between storytelling and speaking for impact. So I started putting all these personal stories together and trying to figure out what's the journey that I've been on, what's the message that I bring from my journey into the work that I do. And so that was my TED Talk pitch, which was what ended up being delivered as belonging is not about fitting in. And it was from my journey as an immigrant to a call to action for those that want to be allies. What stories helped people to understand what it feels like being the only in corporate America?
Talking a little bit about your book, Thriving in Intersectionality. Can you talk a little bit about what intersectionality means to you?
So the word intersectionality is a mindful, and I chose to call my book by that name because I came across that word for the first time when I was doing the research for my book. And it sort of gave a language to what I was trying to explain to people. Being a Black woman, a mom, a woman, a scientist, right? All of these labels we put on people, really, intersectionality is a framework that gives us a language to explore our multiple aspects of our identities, right? Especially underrepresented identities, marginalized identities, how those multiples intersect to give us an advantage or a barrier, right? It could be either or. It doesn't have to be all negative. It could also be positive, right? It started off as my doctoral research focus. That was what I was going to focus on my doctoral research. I was trying to explore the immigrant experience in corporate America. And as a way of narrowing it down, I was looking at a demographic similar to me in that women who are immigrants who have experience in corporate America, what are some of the challenges they're facing? So the book kind of was focused on immigrant women, their stories, immigrant women from different continents, not just Nigeria, not just Africa. And then it kind of led to my podcast, to where I wanted to explore the concept of intersectionality a little broader, not just immigrant women, but now it's immigrants, it's single parents, it's veterans, right? It's thinking of all these intersections that we might not necessarily think about, but that it has shaped people's journey and their careers. My podcast really is a workplace, inclusive workplace podcast. And I try to look for guests who have multiple identity intersections and how they have thrived in their career. So I try to make the platform a space to highlight people that are normally not, speakers or podcasters. But I give people a platform to share what intersectionality means to them, and then to share their stories and their career journey. Because the idea is that somebody listening could relate with one or more of those identity intersections and can walk away with seeing themselves in you and learning some of the things that you used to thrive in your career, and that they can apply to themselves as well.
I love that word thriving.
And that is
so we're going to talk a little bit about what's next for you. You've got the book, you've got the podcast, you've been on a TED Talk, and now you've got the business, EQI Mindset. What would you like people today or the listeners today to know about your business? What could it do for them? Where can they go for information?
Part of what I want to focus on next is my Belonging Benefits series, because I realized that as I'm building this community of employee resource groups, there's still some work to be done with leaders. I'm helping leaders connect, forget about titles and DEI, and we don't have DEI. You have people. You have people working within your organization. They're very diverse. You are in a marketplace where you're selling to global talent. You're hiring people from all over the world, right? There's culture. Um, how are you really connecting the dots as a leadership organization? So that the Belonging Benefits series is sort of helping you put a framework and a support system around how your employees are engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
tapping that into business success and your company strategy, wherever you want to go as an organization. So I think that will always be there, but the Immigrants Incorporated nonprofit is also sort of like a passion project of mine. And I'm trying to go slow with that. As one of our board members reminded me recently, like, does it bring you joy? Does it bring
Mm-hmm.
your members joy? You have big dreams for it. It's not all going to happen overnight, but you are progressing and you
Mm-hmm.
keep finding joy. So that one, I think we're still going to keep growing it, but we are trying to expand our collaborations with campuses, especially community colleges that have a lot of immigrant and international students and first-gen students, to where we help them transition into the workplace through community and resources.
What is one tool or maybe a resource that you would recommend to new leaders who are really wanting to support ERGs? And I know one of them is going to be your Belonging Benefit series, right? That it should be one plug there. But what's another tool that you go to?
Yeah, so I will say for employee resource groups, in 2021, I started realizing part of the challenge is because companies start employee resource group and the ERG leaders try to do it on their own. So
Mm-hmm.
I started this monthly first Friday. Every first Friday of the month, we gather. We have a community of all things ERG. We have a 1 hour call. And a lot of times when people try to start ERGs at their companies because they're passionate about it and they want to do everything. And the only things you see on social media and everybody doing a ton of things, or companies that have had it for 20 years, right? Um, Focus on what you need. Focus on what
Mm-hmm.
you can do as an ERG leader. And so we come together every first Friday of the month. We have a virtual call, and you just sit in the midst of other ERG leaders across different companies. A free community call. We have largely ERG leaders from different companies attending. And I collaborate with Messio Owens, who has an ERG community for ERG leaders. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're an ERG leader or somebody that manages ERGs, just know that your journey is unique, but you also need to be plugged in to see what other people are doing. And there's resources out there. It's what do you need? What do your group
Right.
need? What do you need as an individual, right?
Dr. Adeyemo's origin story began in Nigeria, where strong early parental support helped a young Lola build the resilience and independence she would need to someday immigrate to the U.S., finish her doctorate, start a family, and launch a successful business and nonprofit organization. I wanted to get started really with your origin story. You're raised in Nigeria before coming to the U.S. What was your upbringing like, and how did it shape your sense of identity early on?
Wow. Okay. That's a long question, deep question as
Mhm.
well. But yes, I was born and raised in Nigeria, and how it shaped my sense of identity, I think is interesting because typically Nigerian, West African, culture, third world culture, there is a girl expectation. There is what girls are supposed to do, what girls are supposed to be. There's the cultural norms that is being presented, how women are presented to us in the society as young girls, and how men are presented. And I think I had a very interesting upbringing because even though I grew up in a small town and my mom, the typical has our own business, spent more time at home with us. My dad was a college professor but he
Mm-hmm.
was the one that, went to work, primary provider. And I saw my mom, though, go through multiple entrepreneurial venture. And my dad also instilled so much confidence in me. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom, she had such high expectations of me. That's the best way to put it. I think she always just, envisioned me doing great things. And she would say it in the sweetest way, oh, you're gonna, when you finish, then you go get your master's and, you get your doctorate. She's the first person that used to say I will get a doctorate. And I used to like shut her down, like, I'm not a doctor, like nobody's going to get a doctorate. So I had this interesting where the environment I was growing up with didn't necessarily, I had closed systems that shaped me differently. And so kind of like a conflict with what I'm seeing where I'm growing up, but then what I'm being taught at home. And my dad
Mm-hmm.
was the first of nine, and
Wow.
he had younger siblings. My aunt is a medical doctor. I had another aunt who had a PhD, who was a professor. So I had come from this family of where, they were breaking those cultural stereotypes. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to navigate that against what the society was saying. By growing up in a small town where men will see me and will stop me and compliment me on my looks.
Mm-hmm.
Strangers and will tell you you're so beautiful and you will find a great husband.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think I struggled so much trying to figure out I'm this person that is very driven, that wants to do so many things, but I just didn't feel like the society was necessarily going to allow me to do it. But my parents encouraged me to take those steps anyway. So I think resilience, ambition was kind of instilled in me in a very interesting way. They presented that vision to me in a way where taking the little steps, kind of knowing that maybe it might be attainable in at some point, was a little bit easier.
Did you get your education in Nigeria as well?
Yes, so I got my
Mhm.
bachelor's in Nigeria, and then
Great.
I worked for a little bit. I started my career in Nigeria and then moved to the US on a F1 visa for my master's.
Right. And did you start in biotech? Because I know that was the
Yes.
beginning of your career. Was that in Nigeria? You want to talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
so interesting. Any Nigerian listening to this kind of get the concept. When you're doing well academically, or even if you're not doing well, Nigerian parents, the dream job is to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, the kind of careers that they can comprehend. And so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind because at that, as a child, I also enjoyed my classes and I had fun. I didn't really have these big dreams of I want to be this big doctor or whatever. I just wanted to pass my classes. And when it was time to fill in for college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad said, you can be a doctor. I was like, okay, based on the classes that I was doing very well that I enjoyed, he had a conversation with me, what do you enjoy most? And I said, I loved biology. I said I didn't necessarily like chemistry because I didn't like the maths and the calculations, but I loved biology. I was fascinated by, living things and evolution and loved doing the anatomy classes. So I was like, okay, doctor. And so I went to school for biochemistry.
Mm.
My bachelor's in biochemistry, the goal was to go into medical school.
And then you decided to go in a different route.
So I got into school for biochemistry. The school I got into was the University of Technology. And I think at some point I must have had the conversation, but I with my dad, but I was like, I can't even stand the sight of blood. Like, I don't think I want to be a doctor. I actually want to work in a corporation. I want to work in business.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't see a lot of that around me, but I wanted to be that woman that worked in a big company and I had a story of as a teenager watching the TV and seeing a lady VP being interviewed on TV, and it really struck me like, oh, a woman can work in the, big company. So that's what I was started talking to my dad about, and he was introducing me to some mentors who worked in big companies, and I ended up doing an internship, a 1 month internship, and then a 6 month internship before I finished my school. And both internships were within big companies and
Um,
Lagos, which is a bigger city. And so I think I was lucky, fortunate to have a dad who kind of went on this exploratory journey with me, because I didn't really see myself as a leader, but I think back to it, I was always a class captain, I was a prefect, I was stepping into these roles. And even if we didn't have the experience, he guided me to mentors. He guided me to mentoring experiences that helped me to kind of make those decisions one at a time. So I think my internship was part of it. I think some of the mentors that I got exposed to early, and I got into college at 16. I got
Oh,
admitted.
wow.
I don't know if it was a big decision. I think it was just the little opportunities that got presented to me and having somebody who could help me talk through it.
Gotcha. So your dad sounds really supportive. Your parents sound
Oh,
really
yeah.
supportive. That's
Oh, yeah.
awesome. Not everybody has that, so it's really great to hear that you did. And you mentioned that you started your career in biotech. Was there a time in your journey when you realized you were expected to kind of fit in to spaces rather than belong?
A time, multiple times. But so I did my master's in biotech. So I moved from Nigeria to study biotech. And at that time, I was thinking I was going to go into food biotechnology because that was a little more relevant to Nigeria and the economy. I didn't know much about medical biotech, pharmaceuticals. And so when I came into the US for my grad school, master's in biotech, I think that's when that awakening started happening because now I'm far away from home for the first time, from my very first mentor. My dad was still there for me on the phone, but this is not his space. So I couldn't talk to him about some of the challenges I was having with people, kind of criticizing my accent. I feel like my confidence got chipped on when I came into the US because now I'm not in this world where my dad and my mom think I can do anything. I'm in this world where everything around me is telling me you're weird, you're odd, you don't really fit in here. And that was grad school and then into corporate America. So I think I went into this gradual, my confidence gradually being eroded coming into the US for the first time. I never experienced that until I came here. Being back home was my confidence being built
Hmm.
constantly from by my parents. And so I got into corporate America. It was like, well, how do I fit in here? I have to learn to talk like them. I have to not talk about my background. I have to learn to keep quiet and laugh at the things
Hmm.
that I might not really understand. It's almost like gradually losing confidence and then gradually gaining this fake confidence in
Mm.
what the corporate world says is normal.
Yeah, so you bring up an amazing point, which is it's really hard. And I, from a woman's perspective, not an immigrant's perspective, I also find having to make those translate myself so that others understand in corporate America, or I've had to anyway. Less so in higher education, which is why I love it. But in
Yes.
corporate America, the Nestle's and the FedExes and all those big places, it felt like we call it authenticity, right? That you can't be authentically yourself because you
Mhm.
have to fit into this role.
Right,
And
right.
for you, coming from Nigeria to here and being a woman,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure there was double
And
the
being a
issues
black
there.
person, I think the blackness
Mm,
was also a very interesting part because I am a black woman, but I
hmm.
am not a black woman born and raised in America. And there's a difference in my experiences, but the reactions are all the same. So I think being black in America was also another layer I had to kind of figure out, like, what does this mean? What is happening?
Hmm.
So yeah, multiple barriers, and part of why I got into the research aspect and the work that I'm doing is because there had to be a solution. I had all these questions because something just didn't feel right. And then the more I talked to other immigrants, especially immigrant women,
Hmm.
um, I started to kind of unpack and maybe grow my voice back.
Hmm. Tell us a little bit about one time when you had to design your own space to belong in.
I think my one time that I had to really design was when I became a mom
Yeah.
at 29. I think that was the first time I would say I actually thought about designing. I think those first few years was really about fitting in,
Hmm.
finding out, oh, what is the right way to be a woman at this company? What is the right way to be a Black person at this company?
But when I became a mom at 29, it added another layer. And at that point, it's not sustainable to continue to, have like all these personalities, multiple personalities trying to fit in. So I think the journey for me was learning to be everything that I am, like not having to hide anything. I'm not African American. I wasn't born and raised here. I'm an immigrant, and even learning to love that word. So I'm an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it seems to be a dirty word in America, but that's who I am. And the reason I am is because I wasn't born and raised here. I was born somewhere else, and I'm proud of where I'm born. But this is my home now. I'm an immigrant here, and I'm happy to be here, owning that narrative. I'm a woman. I'm also a millennial. And I think that was also another label that the workplace started to put, oh, millennials are these, millennials are that. As a child, I've been used to stepping into leadership roles. In my classes, all my classes in elementary school, I was the class captain. I naturally gravitated to raise up my hand to take on a role to help others. And so, but then you get into corporate America, and then they start talking about millennials. Nobody talks about millennials now. Everybody has to Gen Z, but it was, oh, you expect these. You have conversation about promotion, and people are like, you just started. I've been here 5 years. I've not been promoted once. You go sit down, right? Like about promotion, right? Like, tell me what it takes to get promoted so that I can walk towards it. I'm not asking you to promote me right now. I'm just trying to have a conversation. And you shut me down like, why are you having that conversation? You're new in the workforce. And so I think for me, it started with really owning my identities, right? Like being comfortable to say I'm a woman, I'm a Black person, I am an immigrant, I'm from Africa, to talk about being from Africa and talk about my experience growing up without feeling like I had to hide it or be ashamed of it. And so I didn't really think of building until when I became a mom at 29. And a lot of the friends that I had didn't have kids, they were chasing careers. And the ones that had kids had quit their jobs to stay home. And I didn't want any of the option, right?
Yeah.
It was not something I planned exactly, but I was ready to have kids. And I'm 29, and that's the reality. But I also loved my job, and I was not going to quit. I mean, 3 months was a lot. I missed work, right? So I was like, I enjoy my career. Fortunately, my husband is also very supportive. Like, I could have said I want to stay home, and he'll be fine. But I was like, I want to work. And then I go back into the workforce, and it was strange. It was like the workplace was not designed for me anymore. And most of the people I was trying to talk to who were pregnant, I decided to quit working. And so it was kind of like asking these questions around, trying to find, where is the nursing room? How do I nurse? Right? I need to pick up my kid at the daycare. Like, what time can I leave? Speaking up whenever a meeting is being set too late, that I need to leave at this time to pick up my son, right? So I think designing for me also kind of started my passion for employee resource groups, because at one of my jobs, I ended up starting an employee resource group for working parents, which was a first one for the history of the company. They only had employee resource groups tied to identities, physical identities. And so being able to design that, no, there are parents here who are working here, and we are the employer, so we should be taking their needs into consideration.
I have to say, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I've really enjoyed getting to know you in all of these various conversations that we've had, but you're a very powerful voice, and I hope that we continue to keep this connection, because I definitely want to talk to you more. I wish you all success, and also success in your personal life with your family and your husband and your business, but also your professional life with, your podcast, your book, your continued professional career. I hope to see you in the future.
Thank you for curating this space with savage simplicity. I love the play of words, and I love the heart that you pour into these conversations as well.
Wise words from Dr. Lola Adeyemo, who's reminding us that when systems don't make space for you, you have every right and every reason to design your own. If this conversation made you feel seen, fired up, or more equipped to take up space, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and don't forget to hit the follow button. This has been Bernadette Hill with Savage Simplicity, reminding you that in order to protect your time, sometimes you have to be savage.